The Grand Senate building was the largest structure Park had ever seen. It stretched across the entire moon like a giant crystal flower, its walls made of something that looked like glass but felt alive when she touched it. 417 alien species sent their representatives here. For 12,000 years, they had made decisions that shaped the entire galaxy. Today, humans would speak in this hall for the first time. Walked slowly toward the center of the room. Her footsteps echoed in the massive space. Thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other organs she could not name followed her movement. Beside her walked Captain Han, a tall man with a calm face that revealed nothing of what he felt inside. The translation device in her ear buzzed softly, turning alien sounds into words she could understand. She heard whispers, some curious, most amused, a few openly mocking. She had prepared for this moment her entire life. 20 years of study, 15 years in the diplomatic service. She knew every protocol, every custom, every proper way to address each species. She knew it would not matter. They had already decided what humans were worth. Nothing. Reached the petitioner's podium, a simple raised platform in the center of the enormous chamber. She looked up at the hundreds of delegates arranged in circular rows rising high above her. She felt small. That was the point of this design. Petitioners were meant to feel small. She cleared her throat and spoke. Honored representatives of the Galactic Concord, I am Ambassador Park of the United Earth Federation. On behalf of humanity, I formally request consideration for associate membership in your great alliance. The laughter started before she finished her sentence. It came from everywhere at once. The tall creatures made of glowing tendrils vibrated with amusement. Their light flickered in patterns that her translator told her meant mockery. The insect-like beings with sharp mandibles clicked their jaws together in what passed for their laughter. They who breathed through holes in their backs let out whistling sounds of derision. Even the, known throughout the galaxy for showing no emotion, swayed their long eye stalks in a way that suggested they found the whole thing funny. Weighted, her face showed nothing. Beside her, his hands tightened behind his back, but he too remained silent. High Arbiter raised one of his many tendrils. He was the oldest in the chamber, over 800 years old, and he had led the Senate for most of that time. His glow was pale with age but still commanded respect. Silence, he said, and the chamber obeyed. He turned his attention to, Human Ambassador, your species has possessed faster-than-light travel for how long? 47 standard years, High Arbiter. 47 years. He repeated the number slowly as if tasting something unpleasant. Do you know how long the waited before petitioning for membership? 3,000 years. The waited 4,000. My own people, waited 6,000 years after achieving. I understand, High Arbiter. However, we believe that age alone should not determine. Your world has no strategic resources, continued, ignoring her words. Your military consists of a handful of small vessels that our youngest species could destroy in an afternoon. Your entire population lives in a single star system. You have nothing to offer the conquered. Took a breath. With respect, High Arbiter, humanity has much to offer. Our scientists have made advances in several fields. Our engineers have developed new approaches to. Your scientists understand things we mastered 10,000 years ago, the delegate interrupted. His mandibles clicked with impatience. Your engineers build toys compared to our great works. You are children, human, children playing at the affairs of adults. Return to your little world. Come back in 1,000 years when you have learned your place in the universe. More laughter filled the chamber. Leaned close to and whispered, we should go. But stood still for a moment longer. She looked up at the assembled delegates, these ancient beings who ruled the stars. She studied their glowing forms, their clicking mandibles, their swaying eye stalks. She memorized every detail. Then she bowed, a human gesture. None of them understood what it meant. "The United Earth Federation thanks you for your time," she said, her voice perfectly calm. "We understand your decision completely." She turned and walked toward the exit, fell into step beside her, matching her pace exactly. They did not hurry. They did not look back. They did not show anger or sadness or shame. Behind them, High Arbiter watched the two small figures leave his chamber. Something about their silence bothered him, though he could not say why. Most rejected petitioners argued. They begged. They made threats they could not keep. These humans did none of those things. They simply left. As the massive doors closed behind them, the Senate returned to its normal business. The human petition had taken less than 10 minutes. It was already forgotten by most delegates before reached the corridor outside. Waited until they were alone before speaking. That went exactly as you predicted. Smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it transformed her face from diplomatic mask to something else. Something patient. Something knowing. "Yes," she said, "it did." "What now?" Walked toward the shuttle that would take them back to their ship, back to Earth, back to everything they had built in silence while the galaxy ignored them. "Now," she said, "we show them what happens when you underestimate humans." Nodded. He had served with for 15 years. He trusted her completely. Whatever she had planned, he would follow. The shuttle lifted off from the moon's surface. Through the window, watched the Grand Senate building grow smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny point of light. She would remember this moment. She would remember the laughter. She would remember the contempt in his voice, the clicking mockery of the dismissive whistles of the. She would remember all of it. And one day they would remember her. 3 months passed after the Senate rejected humanity's petition. In a galaxy where some species lived for thousands of years, 3 months was nothing. A blink of an eye. Most delegates had already forgotten that humans existed. Then the reports started coming in. Trade Administrator of the was the first to notice something strange. His job was to track every ship moving through conquered space, millions of vessels following thousands of trade routes. He had done this work for 200 years. He knew every pattern, every schedule, every normal flow of commerce. Something was different. He pulled up the data on human ships. There were not many of them. A few hundred freighters carrying simple goods, some research vessels studying distant stars, a handful of diplomatic shuttles, nothing important. But all of them were moving in the same direction, away from conquered space, towards Sol, the small yellow star that humans called home. Sent a message to the human embassy on Prime. A simple question: why were all human ships returning home? The response came 3 days later. It was automated, clearly generated by a computer rather than a person. It said, "The United Earth Federation thanks you for your communication. Our offices are currently closed." Found this annoying but not alarming. Perhaps the humans were having some kind of holiday. Young species often had strange customs. He sent another message, and another, and another. All 17 of his messages received the same automated response. By the 4th month, decided to visit the human embassy himself. It was a small building on the outer edge of the diplomatic quarter, nothing compared to the grand structures of the older species. He had never bothered to visit it before. The doors were unlocked. He walked inside and found nothing. Not abandoned, not destroyed, simply empty. The furniture was gone. The computers were gone. The artwork that had decorated the walls, strange flat images of mountains and oceans and forests, all gone. Even the small green plants that humans seemed to love, those were gone too. Everything had been cleaned. The floors were spotless. The walls were bare. It was as if no one had ever lived here at all. Stood in the empty building for a long time, his breathing holes whistling with confusion. He had seen species leave conquered space before. It happened sometimes. Young races grew frustrated or afraid. They always left a mess behind. Abandoned equipment, Forgotten belongings, something. The humans had left nothing. High Arbiter called an emergency session of the Senate. This was unusual. Emergency sessions were reserved for wars, plagues, cosmic disasters, not for the departure of a minor species that had been rejected from membership. But something about this situation made uneasy. The same unease he had felt when watching the human ambassador walk out of his chamber 3 months ago. "Where have the humans gone?" demanded the delegate. His mandibles clicked with irritation rather than amusement now. "Back to their home system," replied. "They are permitted to do this. Any species may withdraw from conquered space at any time." "But why? We rejected their petition. This happens constantly. Lesser species are told to wait and they wait. They do not simply leave." The representative spoke, his voice flat and mechanical through his translation device. "All communication channels to the Sol system have been closed. Our signals receive no response. Long-range sensors show human activity continues within their system, but we cannot determine details." "Then they are sulking," said a delegate. His tendrils glowed with dismissive amusement. "Young species do this sometimes. They feel hurt. They hide. Eventually they realize they cannot survive alone and they come back. It has happened before." Was not so sure. He remembered the human ambassador's face, her calm eyes, her small smile as she walked away. That was not the face of someone who felt hurt. That was the face of someone who had gotten exactly what they wanted. But he said nothing. The Senate voted to take no action. Humanity was insignificant. They would come crawling back eventually, begging for trade, for technology, for help. They always did. Weeks became months, months became a full year. And from the Sol system, there came only silence. No distress signals, no requests for aid, no trade proposals, no diplomatic messages, nothing. The monitoring stations along the border reported the same thing every day. Human activity detected within the Sol system, but no details available. The humans had put up some kind of barrier, something that blocked long-range sensors. This should have been impossible for such a young species, and yet there it was. Some delegates began to worry. They suggested sending a ship to investigate. Perhaps the humans were in trouble. Perhaps something terrible had happened. Perhaps they needed help but were too proud to ask. The Senate debated this proposal for one afternoon and rejected it. Sending a ship would suggest that the conquered cared about humanity. It would suggest that the humans mattered. The conquered could not afford to look weak. So they did nothing. And the silence continued. Administrator sometimes thought about the empty embassy, the spotless floors, the bare walls, the way everything had been removed so carefully, so completely, as if the humans wanted to erase every trace of their presence. He had seen species leave before. He had never seen one disappear. Late at night, when his duties were done and his subordinates had gone home, would stand at his window and look out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of his sensors, the humans were doing something, building something, planning something. He did not know what. But for the first time in his 200 years, Trade Administrator of the felt afraid of a species younger than his own. The problems started small, so small that no one noticed them at first. A trade convoy arrived at its destination 3 days late. This had never happened before. Navigation was perfect. Their route calculations had been refined over 6,000 years. Ships arrived on time, always. Navigation Master checked the data again and again. The numbers made no sense. Gravitational fields had shifted. Subspace currents had changed. The old routes, the routes his people had used for, no longer worked the way they should. He tried to recalculate. He gathered his best mathematicians. They worked for weeks, filling screens with equations, arguing about variables and constants. In the end, they failed. The mathematics was beyond them. Dug through the archives, searching for answers. He found something that made his breathing holes close tight with shock. 20 years ago, they had hired a human mathematician named. She was young, barely trained by Concord standards, but her work was remarkable. In 3 months, she had optimized 17% of all trade routes. Ships traveled faster, fuel costs dropped, profits increased. They had been pleased with her work. They had been less pleased with her fee demands. When she asked for a permanent position and a share of the profits her improvements generated, they laughed at her. A human demanding partnership with the great trading houses. Ridiculous. They paid her a small bonus and sent her away. They assumed her work could be easily understood and maintained by their own people. They were wrong. Had not simply improved the roots. She had rebuilt them from the foundation, using mathematics they had never seen before. Her calculations were beautiful, elegant, and completely incomprehensible to anyone but her. Now she was gone, back to Earth behind the wall of silence, and her roots were falling apart. Similar reports began arriving from across the Concord. They were masters of agriculture. Their farms fed dozens of worlds. Their techniques developed over 8,000 years of careful study. But recently, their crops were failing. Yields dropped 30% in a single season. Plants that had grown strong for generations now withered and died. The scientists searched for the cause. Disease, pollution, climate change. None of their theories fit the evidence. Finally, a young researcher found the answer buried in old records. 15 years ago, they had purchased soil enrichment techniques from human agronomists. The methods had seemed simple enough. Add certain compounds to the soil in certain amounts at certain times. They had done this faithfully. What they had not understood was that the compounds needed regular adjustment. The formulas changed based on dozens of factors: seasonal variations, crop rotation patterns, microscopic changes in soil composition. The human agronomists had provided calibration updates every 6 months. They had never asked why these updates were necessary. They had assumed it was a trick to keep them dependent on human services. When the humans left, they stopped requesting updates. Now their soil was dying, and they did not know how to save it. They suffered in different ways. Their healers used neural interfaces to connect their minds, sharing knowledge and sensation across vast distances. A healer on one world could feel what a healer felt on another, could guide their hands, could share their wisdom. These interfaces had been designed by a human engineer named Shin. He had warned them that the technology was complex, that it required careful maintenance, that problems would develop over time if the systems were not properly cared for. They had thanked him for his concern and then ignored it. They were an ancient species. They had built wonders that humans could not imagine. They did not need advice from children. Now their healing songs were fragmenting. Connections failed without warning. Healers who had worked together for centuries suddenly found themselves alone, unable to reach their partners, unable to share their knowledge. Patients began to die, not many, not yet, but the numbers grew every month. They faced the most dangerous problem of all. Their defensive grid, the network of weapons platforms that protected their home systems, had begun to malfunction. Targeting systems locked onto empty space. Power fluctuations caused unexpected shutdowns. 3 platforms had already gone completely offline. They were a logical species. They did not panic. They simply analyzed the problem and searched for solutions. Their analysis revealed an uncomfortable truth. The defensive grid's core systems were based on human designs. 200 years ago, they had acquired a prototype human weapons system. They had reverse-engineered it, improved it. Their entire defensive network was built on this foundation. But they had never truly understood how it worked. They had the design without comprehending the principles behind it. Now, after 2 centuries of operation, the systems were reaching the end of their functional. They did not know how to repair them. They did not even know how to diagnose the specific failures. They could only watch as their defenses slowly crumbled. High Arbiter received these reports in his private chamber. He read each one carefully, his tendrils dimming with every page. The pattern was clear. Humanity had touched far more of the conquered than anyone realized. Small contributions here and there, easily overlooked, easily forgotten. A mathematical formula, an agricultural technique, a medical device, a weapons system. Individually, these contributions seemed minor. Together, they formed a web of dependencies that the conquered had never noticed. And now that web was unraveling. Remembered the human ambassador's bow, her quiet smile, her words, "We understand your decision completely." She had understood far more than that. She had understood that the conquered needed humanity, more than humanity needed the conquered. And now finally so did. High Arbiter had ruled the Senate for 800 years. In all that time, he had never left the home systems. He had never needed to. The galaxy came to him. Petitioners traveled across the stars to seek his judgment. He did not go to them. Until now. The Conquered's finest diplomatic vessel carried, and representatives from 12 other species toward the Sol system. It was the most advanced ship in the fleet, equipped with sensors that could detect a single atom from 1,000 kilometers away, engines that could cross the galaxy in months, shields that could withstand the heart of a star. It took them 6 months to find a safe route to Sol. The old paths were gone. The navigation beacons that humanity had once maintained were dark. The subspace channels were closed. The delegation had to chart new courses through unexplored space, moving slowly, carefully, afraid of what they might find. What they found stopped them cold. The Sol system had transformed. Massive structures orbited every planet. Construction platforms the size of cities floated in the void, their purpose unclear. Space stations larger than some moons hung motionless against the stars, lights flickering across their surfaces in patterns that seemed almost alive. And ships, thousands of ships, designs the conquered had never seen, sleek and silent and terrifying in their strangeness. They moved through the darkness like predators, aware of everything, afraid of nothing. Stared at the display screen, his tendrils frozen in shock. This was impossible. 5 years. The humans had been gone for only 5 years. No species could build so much so quickly. It violated every principle the conquered understood about technology, about resources, about the limits of possibility. And yet there it was. A small human vessel approached the delegation. It was tiny compared to the conquered ship, barely larger than a shuttle, but something about its design made ancient instincts scream danger. A face appeared on the communication screen. A young woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple uniform with symbols did not recognize. "Galactic conquered vessel," she said. "This is Lieutenant I.M. of the United Earth Defense Force. State your purpose." Moved closer to the screen, trying to project authority despite his confusion. "We are a diplomatic delegation from the Galactic Conquered. We wish to speak with your leaders." Regarding what subject? Regarding humanity's return to conquered space. We wish to discuss terms for renewed relations. The lieutenant's expression did not change. Wait. The screen went dark. 17 minutes passed, counted every second. Around him, the other delegates shifted nervously. Thus mandibles clicked in anxious patterns. Thus breathing holes whistled with stress. Even thus eye stalks twitched with uncertainty. When the screen lit again, a different face appeared. Older, male. Lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth. Hair cut short in a military style. He looked at the delegation the way a teacher might look at a student who had disappointed him. "High Arbiter," he said, "I am Admiral of the United Earth Federation. I remember you." Searched his memory. He had met thousands of humans during their brief presence in conquered space. This one did not stand out. "We have met before," he asked. "I was a junior during Ambassador Park's petition. I stood in the back of your Senate chamber. I watched you laugh at us." His voice was flat, empty of anger or accusation. He was simply stating facts. "I remember every word you spoke." His tendrils flickered with discomfort. "Admiral, that was. Perhaps we were too hasty in our judgment. The Conquered has reconsidered its position. We are prepared to offer humanity associate membership. Full membership could be discussed, trade agreements, technology sharing, whatever humanity requires." "No." The word echoed in the silent chamber. "I do not understand," said. "What part confuses you?" asked. "The word is simple. No, we refuse." "But you petitioned for membership. Your ambassador came to us seeking alliance." "That was 5 years ago. We were different then, young, hopeful. We believed that cooperation with ancient species would benefit humanity. We believed that wisdom came with age." Paused. "We were wrong." "Admiral, please, the Conquered is experiencing difficulties. Systems are failing. Technologies we do not fully understand are breaking down. We need—" "You need us," finished the sentence without emotion. "Yes, we know, we have known for years, longer than you have known." Felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. True fear, deep in whatever served as his heart. "What do you want?" he asked. "Name your price. The Conquered has resources, knowledge, power we can offer." "You can offer nothing we need," leaned forward slightly. "When we came to you, we came as friends. We offered partnership, mutual benefit, growth together. You saw only weakness. You saw only youth. You saw nothing worth respecting." "We made a mistake." "Yes, you did. And we learned from your mistake, even if you did not." Eyes were cold but not cruel, just empty of any warmth. "We learned that we could rely on no one but ourselves. We learned that the galaxy's ancient species were not wise, only old. We learned that the Conquered was not a community, only a collection of beings too proud to see their own decay." Wanted to argue. He wanted to defend his people, his Senate, his legacy. But the words would not come, because deep in his core he knew the human was right. "So what happens now?" asked quietly. "Now you go home, you tell your Senate what you have seen. You tell them that humanity will not be joining the Conquered. Not now, not ever. We will remain in our space. You will remain in yours. If you wish to trade with us, you may submit proposals through official channels. We will consider them. And if we refuse, if the Conquered decides to take what we need by force—" Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Look at your sensors, High Arbiter. Look at what we have built in 5 years of silence. Then ask yourself, do you really want to test us?" Looked, he saw the ships, the stations, the weapons platforms hidden among the asteroids, barely visible, pointing outward. He saw what humanity had become. And he knew the Conquered would never challenge them. "We understand," he said softly. "We will go." "Good," nodded. "There is one more thing. Ambassador Park wishes to address your Senate. She has a message for all of you. You will broadcast it to every world in the Conquered." Ambassador Park. She remembers the Senate too. She remembers everything. His voice carried something almost like warmth now, a hint of pride. "She has been waiting 5 years to speak to you again. I suggest you listen carefully." The screen went dark, and the delegation turned for home, carrying a message that would change everything. The Grand Senate chamber was full for the first time in centuries. Every seat was taken, every delegate present. Even species that rarely attended had sent representatives to witness this moment. They had all heard rumors of what the delegation found in the Sol system. Stories of impossible construction, tales of human ships that moved like ghosts through the void, whispers of weapons that could crack worlds. Now they would hear the truth. High Arbiter took his place at the center of the chamber. His tendrils were dim, his movements slow. The journey had aged him in ways that 800 years of leadership had not. Fellow delegates, he said, the conquered faces a crisis unlike any in our history. Not war, not plague, not disaster, something worse. We face the consequences of our own pride. He activated the central display. A holographic image appeared above the chamber floor. Park. She looked older than she had 5 years ago. Threads ran through her dark hair. Lines had appeared around her eyes. But she stood straight and tall, wearing a simple uniform similar to admirals. And on her face was the same small smile she had worn when walking out of this chamber years ago. Honored representatives of the Galactic Conquered, she said. Her voice was calm, warm, even. Not angry, not triumphant, simply confident. Thank you for receiving this message. I know many of you do not remember me. I stood where this image stands now 5 years ago asking for your friendship. You refused. She paused, letting the words settle. You asked us what we could offer. You found our answer insufficient. So we spent 5 years answering a different question. What were we truly capable of? The image behind her shifted. Views of the Sol system appeared. Construction platforms, shipyards, research stations, colonies on worlds that had been barren rock 5 years ago. In 5 years, we have built what the conquered could not build in 5,000. Not because we are smarter than you, not because we have resources you lack, but because we were forced to rely on ourselves. The image shifted again. Charts and graphs appeared showing conquered decline, trade routes failing, agricultural yields dropping, medical systems collapsing, military readiness falling. You did not notice how much you depended on us. A mathematical formula here, an engineering solution there. Small contributions easily overlooked, but remove them and everything begins to fall apart. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Delegates looked at each other with new understanding. They had thought humanity was insignificant. They had been wrong. We did not do this to hurt you, continued. We simply left. We took nothing that was not ours. We broke no laws, no treaties, no agreements. We simply chose to stop helping those who did not value our help. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. You called us children. Perhaps we were. Children learn by watching their elders, but children also grow. And sometimes children discover that their elders have nothing left to teach them. She folded her hands in front of her. The United Earth Federation will not be joining the Galactic Conquered. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. We have no interest in becoming part of a community that saw us as inferior. We have no desire to serve those who laughed at our ambition. The chamber was completely silent now. No clicking mandibles, no whistling breath, no swaying eye stalks, just silence. However, said her voice softening, we are not your enemies. We do not wish to see the conquered fall. We do not seek revenge for old insults. We simply wish to be treated as equals, nothing more, nothing less. If you wish to trade with us, we will consider fair proposals. If you wish to exchange knowledge, we will discuss terms. If you face dangers too great to handle alone, we may choose to help. But we will never again come to you as petitioners. We will never again ask for acceptance. We will never again tolerate being treated as lesser beings. She looked directly at the display, as if she could see through it to the assembled delegates. You rejected us because we were young. You assumed our silence was surrender. You believed we would come crawling back, begging for the scraps from your table. Her smile returned, gentle but sharp as a blade. You were wrong. We have a saying on Earth. The tree that grows in silence grows the deepest roots. For 5 years, we grew in silence. Now our roots reach deeper than any of you imagined possible. She bowed, the same gesture she had made 5 years ago when leaving this chamber. When you laughed at us, you taught us the most valuable lesson we ever learned. You taught us that we could depend on no one but ourselves. For that lesson, we are grateful, and for that lesson, we forgive you. She straightened. But we will never forget. The image flickered and disappeared. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, High Arbiter rose from his seat. His tendrils hung dim and heavy. He looked at the empty space where his image had been. "The human ambassador speaks the truth," he said quietly. "We laughed at them. We dismissed them. We sent them away without a second thought, and in doing so we made the greatest mistake in the Concord's 12,000-year history." He turned to face the assembled delegates. "They will not help us. They will not save us. Whatever problems we face, we must solve alone, just as they were forced to do when we rejected them." The delegate spoke, his mandibles clicking slowly. "Then what do we do?" His answer was simple. "We learn, we adapt, we change, or we fade away while humanity rises to take our place." The Senate had no response to that, because they all knew it was true. Far away in the Sol system, Park stood at a window overlooking Earth. The blue and green planet turned slowly below her, beautiful and fragile and home. Beside her stood Admiral. Do you think they understood? Watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the Concord's delegation was making its long journey home, carrying her words to every world in the galaxy. "Some will," she said. "Some will not. It does not matter. We did not speak for their benefit. We spoke for our own, so that future generations would know why we chose this path. And if they come with warships instead of words." Smiled, the same smile she had worn 5 years ago, walking out of the Grand Senate chamber. The same smile she had carried through years of preparation, planning, building. "Then they will learn another lesson, the same one they should have learned when they laughed at us." She turned to face. "Never underestimate humans." Outside, ships moved through the darkness. Stations hummed with activity. Millions of humans lived and worked and dreamed among the stars, free from the Concord's shadow. They had left without a sound. And in their silence, they had become something the galaxy would never forget. Something the galaxy would never again dare to laugh at. Something new. Something powerful. Something human.